Welcome to the next episode of Zebra Spotlight, and I'm super privileged to be joined by not one, but by three astounding sound re-recording mixers who are all responsible to be working on Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Amazon Prime's new hit series, which has taken the world by storm. And we're going to go into a deeper dive into that shortly. Let me introduce my guests. So we have Lindsay Alvarez, Bo Borders, both in Los Angeles, and Damien Del Borello in Wellington, New Zealand. So some short introductions for all three of you. Lindsay, originally from Houston, Texas, is a re-recording mixer and sound editor at the Formosa Group. She graduated from Miami University in music engineering, technology, and computer science. Following graduation, she started work at Lime Studios in Santa Monica, where she mixed award-winning commercial campaigns for the likes of Coke, Microsoft, and Chrysler. Since 2013, she's been working in film and TV. And at Bad Robot, she collaborated with director J.J. Abrams for the sound of BB-8 in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. She's also won a Golden Reel Award for her editing work in War for the Planet of the Apes. Bo Borders is a Sound Mixing Academy Award nominee for his work on Lone Survivor. He's collaborated on huge blockbuster films like Titanic, Lord of the Rings, Transformers, Iron Man 3, The Last Stand, Captain America, and Battleship. He's also been the re-recording mixer on recent releases such as Ambulance, Morbius, and Uncharted. He's also an accomplished race driver and founder of Borders Racing, boasting consistent national and US major tour wins in the highly competitive Formula Mazda series. And last but not least, Damien Del Borello is a multi-award nominated supervising sound editor, sound designer, and re-recording mixer with over 17 years experience in all aspects of sound post-production, and most recently as co-supervising sound editor for Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. He's the founder of his own post-sound company, DB Sound. He attended the prestigious Australian Film, Television and Radio School in Sydney. He was mentored by Academy Award-winning sound designers and re-recording mixers, sharing a nomination for the Student Academy Award for Best Foreign Short Film. His previous credits include Starz Spartacus, Blood and Sand, AMC's Fear the Walking Dead, Netflix's Marco Polo, as well as a host of domestic feature films and TV series produced on Australia, New Zealand, and China. In addition to post-production work, Damien is also a university lecturer. Thank you, all of you, for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having us. Hey, you only left out that Lindsay just won an Emmy.
I think we both areas peaked up there.
And congratulations. And I did read that on LinkedIn recently, so heartiest congratulations to you. And on behalf of the Formosa Group, I did see that on LinkedIn. It's something that we were going to mention, but thank you very much for the for the hint and the cue. So Lindsay, let's start off with you. So I read that you're from a musical background, and in fact, your love of TV and film started somewhere from your father's video shop.
Yes, it was a fun experience growing up. We would go to the video store where he was working and basically peruse the aisles, because this is when you would go to video stores. It wasn't a Blockbuster or anything, just like mom and pop shop. But yeah, we would just like look at all the posters basically, or like the VHS tapes, like when we were like, oh, what's this one? I mean, I just remember seeing like The Last Temptation of Christ with, Willem Dafoe's face. I'm like, what is that movie? And like a lot of horror films and stuff. So yeah, I was always intrigued with film, and very happy being in it now.
And interestingly, we don't, I mean, it's so refreshing to see a woman who's accomplished so much within the industry. It's fairly rare. I think there's a growing number of women entering the industry who are doing very, very well these days. But certainly at your time, I'm assuming there are probably very few women who actually entered the field in terms of your study and then the industry afterwards. How was that for you?
Yes. So at our university, I think there were only like 4 women in our program. The other one is actually, we're she's working at Sony as a getting into re-recording mixing, and so that's kind of fun. But we all kind of see each other when we when we meet, and we're like, oh yay, hey, you're in this too, look at us. But it's different, but it's nothing out of the norm. More and more, you're seeing more women on the mix stage, and cutting sounds, and sound designers, and you get used to being around men, but then you're like, hey, woman's here. So it's kind of fun when we all get to be together.
Good. Now, let's come on to, I'm going to ask you, all of you, various questions to do about different stages of your career. Coming on to Bo now, you've done some of the titles I mentioned there from an audio perspective are some of my favorite films that I've watched in a home movie theater, particularly things like The Last Stand. And all I can remember is Arnie with this Gatling thing and just mayhem and explosions and fast cars. Battleship in DTS-X is a reference disc. It's on the DTS reference disc for home demonstrations. I mean, some of these things are incredible sonically. Have you got a fascination for sort of adrenaline pumped blockbuster films? Is that something that you vibe with?
I'm certainly always drawn to something that's got a little more octane in it than just a talkie. I mean, I just finished the film Amsterdam, which is very much a talkie, but even the approach in that was, the pace had to stay alive the entire time. So, sometimes you keep that pace with explosions, sometimes you keep it with music, sometimes you keep it with machine guns, sometimes it's with fast dialogue. To me, I'm not really super drawn to any one particular soundscape. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself and say, I only want to work on World War II movies, because you're not going to end up working a lot. I just really like to work on movies where the sound is going to make a huge difference. And certainly, Lord of the Rings is a prime example of that. I didn't know that Battleship was on the DTS reference shelf, but that actually makes sense. It's kind of funny because we're all very technical, and we're all very creative, and there's a balance between technology and creativity in what we do. So I can nerd out with you all day long and talk about plugins and reference levels and all this stuff, or I can just kind of talk about just kind of like what we do from a creative point of view. And when we did Battleship, I was sitting on a panel, and somebody asked me. They said, "Oh, for your home theater spec, did you guys use a multiband compressor?" Da, 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 and started asking me this like very technical question. And I said, I got to be honest with you, I kind of just pretended I was sitting in my living room, and I had a beer in my hand, and the remote control was on the coffee table, and my whole goal was to never put the beer down and have to pick the remote control up and make an adjustment. And everybody laughed, but it was kind of an honest answer, and that's kind of the approach that Damo and Lindsay and our other co-supervising sound editor Robbie Stambler and Paula Fairfield, like we all kind of have this mindset of what is this project going to sound like on a small device, on a big device, on the coolest, most awesome home theater setup, or a movie theater, if you're lucky enough to go see it there.
Now, coming on to you, Damien, the interesting thing is, one thing from a layman's point of view, co-supervising a team of incredible creatives, how does that happen? How do you co-supervise a bunch of superheroes
that's a
all at the
question
same time?
I'm trying to answer myself sometimes. Look, I guess every show is different. So this show, Robbie was actually, he had the relationship with the producer right at the start, so he got the first call. And then I think when they were figuring out New Zealand as a destination for the production, they needed to find someone else local. And so then I got. I mean, this whole process has been a very long one. So the first call I got was in December the week before Christmas in 2019. And then the first week of January, got the job. We started in February. So I was actually on the show for 2.5 years. And so, but most of that time, or not most, about a year of that time was actually just me and Robbie. So the original idea was we would be embedded with picture editorial and be feeding our sound effects pre-dubs to the picture editorial department so that they could sort of be updating and refining their cut with really nice sounding sound effects. Because of the content, I mean, it's a fantasy show. There's so much sound design. There's so much to build. But COVID kind of interrupted that. Within 2 months of starting on the show, everyone went home. We all had to start working remotely, and so the plan kind of changed. And Robbie and I were just sort of building the sounds of the world remotely. He was in LA, I was down here in Wellington, and for about a year it was just the two of us. And then sort of one by one, we slowly picked up crew from about July 2021, starting with dialogue team to start getting on top of ADR. That was sort of as the cuts were starting to become fully formed, the showrunners and the editors developed a really good idea of what they wanted, and while the actors were still in town, because the show wrapped end of July, so there was a bit of a rush to get everyone before they left the country. But the crew itself, by the time we were fully spun up, was pretty well split between New Zealand crew and American crew, which is just so fantastic. Like, because if you think about the original films 20 odd years ago, it was very much like that as well. There was a whole lot of people who came over from the States to do the show in Wellington, New Zealand, and actually Bo was one of them back in the day. So there's a real history of this collaboration with New Zealand and US crews, and it was just awesome to continue that and to sort of bring it through a new generation of sound professionals. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
no, it does. It does, because I think it's that magic, isn't it? That when you have that familiarity and sort of common love for a project and it's rekindled, that it's almost like family sort of reuniting, and everyone's already aware of each other's strengths and working on that. I mean, the show itself, I mean, congratulations to you, to all the team. Everyone knew that, you know, this is going to be special when the trailers were announced and things, but it's rumored to spent $400 million or something along those lines for this show. And the opening scenes, I mean, when this thing started, I thought, oh my God, I had to pause it, switch the projector on, get the screen to come down, because I said, this is a cinematic theatrical moment. You know, this is glorious. And the cinematography was just you know, mind blowing. And the interesting being that when the 4K Ultra HD re-release for Lord of the Rings came out, it won awards all over the place. These were reference discs for audiovisual performance. So I guess we couldn't expect anything other than just brilliance when it came to a TV series. And you know, again, Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, I mean, it looks and sounds astounding. But you know, seeing the team, it's of no surprise. So you know, congratulations to all of you.
You know, I think a big part of that is that from the outset, our filmmakers, when they came to us, nobody ever called it a TV show. You know, we really approached this as if it was a really huge cinematic event. And part of that is because we knew, you know, we just had to embrace it. Like, some people are going to be watching it on this thing. And if that's just the way it's going to go, well, how do we make it look and sound great on that as well? And, you know, I always beg people, please watch this on the biggest screen you can, listen to it on the biggest speakers you can, please, please, please. But if you don't, I think you're still going to get a great experience. And you know, because our filmmakers were all spread out all over the world, COVID had a lot to do with that. You know, we had the capability of seeing what device our filmmakers were going to be referencing our playbacks on, and it was a big spread of tablets and sound bars and 5.1 and everything. So we just embraced it. You know, I went out and I got a sound bar, and we would go to our house after work, and we would like watch an episode, and we, you know, Lindsay would be over there with her headphones on and listening to what's on like that, and Damo would be in his room on, you know, bookshelf speakers, and you know, we just try to average out everything so that it kind of worked on everything, because you know, we know, but I'm not sure how much of the audience knows, you know, there isn't a separate sound mix for a phone. You know, there's your home theater mix, there's a 5.1, there's a stereo, but that mix isn't tuned to just a cell phone or just a tablet or just a sound bar. So we kind of all had to get together and creatively figure out how to just make it work on a sound bar and a 5.1 setup or a home Atmos setup if you have one, you know. And it was that was a big challenge, but it was a lot of fun. You know, normally on film, on big movies, we work in this like amazing laboratory with a subwoofer that achieves octaves like no other, and perfectly calibrated, you know, Atmos setup and everything. And you know, we know that when it goes out into the world, the theater's going to turn it down a little bit, or maybe they decided to unplug their subwoofer because they could hear the movie next door or something, you know, some god awful setup like that, and it drives us nuts. But in this case, we just went the other way. We just said, all right, well, you know, not everybody's going to have the same setup, so let's just embrace it. Let's try to make it work for everything. And that was we all learned a lot trying to do it.
And I've got to say,
that was.
Sorry, I was gonna say full credit to Bo and Lindsay on this, because they spent a lot of time. Like, the 2-track of this show is probably one of the best sounding 2-tracks I've ever heard for a show that's this dynamic. It's got so much detail in it. That 2-track on all the devices that I ended up watching this show just sounded phenomenal, and that's because of these two guys here. Sorry, Lindsay, over to you.
No, I was just going to say, I love that was your reaction when you started the show. You're like, wait a minute, I need to embrace this, because you're right. I mean, it will probably, majority will be on the phones or the tablets or whatever. And you know, we are all so proud of that 2-track that it took some time to develop that, which Bo really spearheaded that. But yeah, also love the cinematic experience of it.
I'm lucky to have a 9.2.4 system here, and it's sort of a 6 meter by 5 meter room, and the subs are dual 10-inch subs. It sounds incredible, and it really is a theatrical experience. And the nice thing is it's celebrating your work, and I think half the time of getting the kit right is to celebrate what you guys have done. And if you, as you said before, if you really want to enjoy everything in its glory, just have the kit, and it just gets better and better. But but as you said, vast majority of us with sound bars, just to get a 2-channel superb mix, it does the show justice, because that's what most people have at home. So Lindsay, you've worked on some pretty awesome stuff, and I'm a huge Tarantino fan, and I can see the poster in the background.
Me too.
So I get from the audience perspective. So what's it like to work on a Tarantino film?
Well, first of all, like, surreal. You're just like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. I was fortunate to be working with Wiley's Statement at the time that they were working on that project. And I was brought in as the ADR supervisor. And I was like, I know he rarely uses ADR, so what am I going to be doing? But I'll take it. But no, it was really great because not only was I the ADR supervisor, but I was the dialogue stage editor, which is very necessary when you're going through a final mix on that kind of film. So yeah, we tried to salvage as much dialogue from production as we could. You know, even the loud car ones, you know, when there's just a bunch of air going around. I think there were just a couple lines of dialogue and we had loop group, but yeah, the main thing that was the icing on the cake was recording or finding a narrator for the film, and that's when I really did get to work one-on-one with Quentin, and yeah, we auditioned a couple actors for it. Realized who, you know, that Kurt Russell was the guy, that the perfect voice for it, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, yeah, just a fun experience for that.
But it was.
Nothing like New Zealand though.
You can't have it all.
Yeah.
And interestingly, and one of the other titles you worked on was Overlord. Again, you did the dialogue editing work and re-recording mixing for Overlord. And again, it's I know it's a bit of a cult sort of following, but in terms of the Atmos mix, again, it's one of those reference scenes, the sort of plane scene at the beginning. And throughout, it's just one of those films that just sounds awesome. And people, as soon as they've got a movie theater type experience or home theater experience, everyone's aware of it. I mean, you've worked on some great projects.
Thank you. Yeah, that was also, that was a very fun experience, because that opening is just in your face and relentless, but that's kind of the vibe that we wanted. And I mean, it was always tough when you start that one in the morning. You're just like, oh God, here we go. Am I ready for this? Did I have my coffee? But you're like, okay, here we go. Bah! Loud sounds. No, but it was like really tough because I mean, you have the plane, everybody's inside just you know, yelling, and you're just trying to get that tense moment before these guys, you know, have to jump out of a plane, land behind enemy lines, and you know, fight. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to work on that one. The music was so much fun because it's also really tough because you have this loud airplane, or you know, I don't even know the right terminology for the plane, but I think it's, oh, Robbie would kill me. It's a C something. The doors are open. It's the one that the paratroopers jump out of. But because of the, you know, the open door, you have all the wind and everybody shouting, and it's a tense moment. But then you have this like rhythmic music that starts pumping, and you're like, whoa. And, you know, that one it was a lot of fun to like embrace the Atmos mix, you know, put all the music around you, and as well as, you know, pump up the subwoofer with it. But I mean, I feel like it really gets you like right here, and that was the fun part. Yeah, it was good.
Now, Damien, when it comes to, you know, you guys are telling the story, you're pushing the narrative, and you're convincing the audience that what they see on the screen, that's what it sounds like. You are there, and it's very, very real. And now, particularly for a fantasy show, that can become quite an arduous task. So, as you know, sound supervising, and in terms of creativity, what are some of the gems and things, or pearls of wisdom that you can share with people who are entering the industry or trying to work on such projects? In fantasy film of convincing the audiences?
Well, I mean, funny thing is, before Rings, I've never worked on a fantasy before, so I guess because I'm a bit of a analytical, conceptual worker, so I like to do a lot of research before I sort of start anything, even if it's you know, the sound of a door that's like, you know, so like for example, the door that you enter into the dwarven kingdom. Like there was a whole scene in front there that I spent half a day on the TolkienWiki.net researching, and also the characters, Celebrimbor, because that was one of the first sort of times where we're introduced to Celebrimbor. Certainly in the way that things were turned over to us in that post-production process. That was the first thing we saw him. So I basically had that tab open for like 2 years on my computer. And I was just always reading. And I think that's probably something that we're really fortunate to have, because Tolkien is such a massive universe. I could, if I was ever at a point where I wasn't sure which direction to go, I would just pull up the webpage and sort of dig into the lore, and the answer would come. So that's not something that you have really at all on many shows, apart from, you know, if it's based on a book or like a TV series based on a movie, that type of thing. I guess for me, like we didn't have a lot of contact with our showrunners, because when we started, they were so busy shooting, and then when by the time we finished and started like post proper, they were actually in the UK. So the sort of the onus was a lot on Robbie and I to just sort of work through and workshop ideas, have a shot at things, and then rip it apart and put it back together type thing. So I think one of the key things for, certainly on the sound supervising side, it's like collaboration is key. And so it's like, be open to killing your babies. You spend hours and hours and hours, days, sometimes weeks on these small sequences, and you sort of orchestrate every little beat and craft these things that you're so proud of, because it's such a creative sort of endeavor. And then you present it to your, you know, say to Robbie or to an editor, picture editor. We worked a lot with the picture editors on this one, or you present it, and then all of the notes come in and you have to rip it apart and put it back together in a different way. And that's okay. And that's what, like, you really have to be okay with that, because in the end, we're all serving the film. We're serving the narrative. We're serving the emotion of a scene or whatever. So I think that's probably one of the key skills to develop. And communication is a big part of that as well. Being able to communicate. And, you know, yes, you've got to stand up for your ideas and give it its day in court and give it the best chance of succeeding. But you've also got to try and decipher and sort of reiterate what the notes are coming based on the work, and just understanding that it's not about you, it's about the work. That's probably one of the key things, certainly for younger, or certainly when I was first starting in the industry, it was probably one of the hardest things to get my head around. So I think that's probably the one pearl that I can offer.
Very wise words of wisdom there. It's through experience. Bo, I wanted to read a couple of quotes to you, if I may.
Uh-oh.
So
what did I say now?
Well, no, you didn't say them, but here we go. Anything that gets your blood racing is probably worth doing. Hunter S. Thompson. And if everything seems under control, you're just not going fast enough. Mario Andretti.
I think both those quotes can be applied to filmmaking and race car driving.
Are you sure Bo didn't say those?
Yeah. So these are the opening quotes on your website, Borders Racing. You're an avid racing driver, well accomplished. You know, you've won trophies. How does your art and creativity in filmmaking sort of complement with the adrenaline pumped racing on the track?
Surprisingly, there are way too many similarities. The jobs that we do, we have chosen to put ourselves in the line of fire, and we sit with sometimes very complicated directors, producers, editors, a wide range of personalities. And there are certainly days at the mixing console that you feel like you might not live to see the end of the day.
Wow.
It's a pretty high pressure gig.
Wow.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, over time, I mean, they've even developed a system where there's a counter underneath the screen with numbers that go by, and everywhere you see in the mixing stage, there's pads and pens so that people can accurately make lists of everything that you're doing that they don't like. And then we do a notes section where everybody goes, okay, item number 1 that you did wrong, here you go. Item number 2 that you did wrong, here you go. And like that can be a lot to handle.
Wow.
And race car driving is really, really similar. I mean, you've got all these, your engineers, your crew guys, your team owner. They've put to this car together. It's up to the driver to get that thing around the track as quick as it can possibly go. There's always a way to make it go a little quicker. Maybe you're not doing it right. Maybe the tires aren't set up right. Maybe the way the car's calibrated isn't right. But it's up to you to kind of figure out whose fault is it that the car isn't going faster. And you can very quickly offend your crew chief if you get out and you just say, the front end's not right. Well, what do you mean? I spent all night on that. Well, it was right for the last driver. And then the same thing, you can walk onto a mixing stage and go, the subwoofer isn't feeling right. And then the engineer can go, what are you talking about? We just did Transformers Part 14 in here, and they didn't complain about the subwoofer. And like, so that everybody is very high strung in both. Trust me, I do go race cars. I find to relax. I do find it very fun and euphoric and relaxing. But I don't know why I've chosen a really high pressure career and a high pressure hobby. I don't think I'm wired right. I think I'm the one that's doing this wrong.
No, I think it's fine. I think you just have to add a bit of yoga into the mix, and it'll be all balanced.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, the people I've interviewed in the past, one of the things that, particularly for achieving success, there's a lot that depends on just being nice to one another and being kind and teamwork. But obviously, in reality, particularly with as you just mentioned, high budget projects that have to be done on time, and COVID came along, but we still have to get things out. How do you handle sort of high pressure days, or when things just aren't going right, or there's issues with a team member, but at the end of the day, there has to be a fabulous production at the end of it? How do you guys cope with that? How do you, what advice can you give for people in the industry where things sometimes get very, very tough?
I'll say that pretty early on, we were, Lindsay and I can be quite spoiled when we work in the environments that we get to work in, where, if something isn't working, we just say to the engineer, hey, it's not working. And then we go get a cup of coffee and we're good. Now here we are all the way in New Zealand, and we were at a studio where we really had to train up a lot of people. We really had to empower and trust people that hadn't quite done a project this big before. And we all really wanted it to succeed, and we wanted the people to succeed. So I think pretty quickly we just erased any kind of hierarchy of who's in charge, who's the up and comer, who's this, who's that. And we both kind of sat there and said, look, nobody's going to fail. Nobody's going to be mad at you if the computer crashes. Nobody's going to be mad at you if you set something one way and then halfway through the day you realize it should be set another way. It's okay. Like nobody's going to yell and scream. We're going to get through this. And that was kind of a bit of a mantra that we kind of had all the way through it. And it's part of the reason we were actually able to finish the thing on time.
Lindsay, what about in your experience?
I would say yes, you have to have the attitude. I can only speak for myself. If the problem happens, it's how you react to it, and you can be calm or you can be, I don't know, something else. But I think I've just chosen to be more on the calm side and like, okay, well, yeah. And like how Bo said, let's work through this and let's figure something out. Whether it's something with, machinery, or, let's say, the mix is going crazy, which I think we had a great mix. But if you're experiencing something like that, I think the attitude just has to be like, all right, we need somebody here, or, we all need to just be like, let's figure this out and work through it. So that's how I do it as well. It's almost, I feel like it's almost like your race car driving, you have such like a nice Zen like attitude, and you can't freak out or else you crash. but yeah, like that. But no, I mean, yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like having, a calm attitude, and yeah, things can get a little crazy, but yeah, you just work with the people that are there working with you. You're all working together to, figure things out, and and you're like, Damo, can you help? And Damo will come up and help.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely like. So I think for me, it's like doesn't matter where you are, what industry you're in, who you are, how experienced or inexperienced you are. There's always going to be mistakes. There's always going to be something that goes wrong, and that's just the nature of humans and the nature of the world. And I think and so to think that you can stop that. I mean, obviously you can do things, you can get better technically and train and all that sort of stuff, but like things are always going to go wrong in some way. And I think so that means the important thing is how you react to it, right? And it's exactly what you're saying, Lindsay. Like you either choose to deal with it in a rational, calm, kind way, or some people choose to do it a different way. But I think certainly for me as a supervisor, in sort of like a leadership role, I think the important thing is for me personally, and it's a way that I like to manage. It's the idea of like, rather than being in charge of people, your job is to care for the people in your charge and make sure that they have what they need to do the job as best as they can. And it comes back to this like sort of like a management idea of like servant leadership. Yes, I've got a job to do. Yes, I've got all these scenes to cut sound effects for, but there's also this team of 6 or 7 or however many people that need stuff, and making sure that they have what they need to do their job as best they can is probably the more important part of the job as a supervisor. So and that's really hard. I mean, that's the burden of leadership. Like if you want to be a leader, you have to give up like some of the fun stuff. You have to give up some of that stress-free work. And and sometimes not everyone's suited to it. I do think you need to have a certain temperament to be able to do this type of work. Yeah, and much like a car race, not everyone would be comfortable hurtling down a track at 200 kilometers an hour.
Oh, that's fantastic. You answered my question on leadership, and so thanks for that. I can take that one off the list. In your own individual careers and development, what can we expect future projects in the next coming months, next year or so, each one of you?
Oh boy, I mean, as freelancers as we are, it is so hard to even say that. I mean, I could list all the things that I'm penciled in on, but the way schedules move around these days, I almost have a phobia of even like updating IMDb until I actually see my name go across the credits. So to out what I've got coming up, I almost feel like it'll jinx me. Like I won't actually get that movie if
We
I
don't want
say
that.
it. Yeah, exactly.
And Lindsay, is there anything we can look forward to that you want to announce?
Yeah, well, I'm currently working on a TV show, another show for Amazon Prime called Daisy Jones and the Six. It's based off a book. It's a lot of fun because it's about a band from the 70s. It's fiction, so but the music is so much fun because it's you have this band that forms and they are playing in different venues. I mean, it's like from scene to scene, source music here. Okay, we're at a live performance. Okay, now we're at a bar. We're doing this and this. And it's like, it is so much fun, but it is a lot of work. And I'm thankful for the team that I have, helping me with it because, yeah, and it would take a lot longer if I had to mix, all the raw music. And so, yeah, it's like, it's going to be a fun one. I'm very excited. Atmos mix. And yeah, can't wait for people to see it. It'll be out in March.
Fantastic. Damien, over to you.
It's going to be a busy time for me. So I'm a little bit different because these guys mainly do mixing. I guess their sort of bookings are sort of shorter periods, whereas I'm sort of moving into a new show sort of in the next few weeks. The new Taika Waititi series based on the Time Bandits Terry Gilliam film from the 80s. So that's been shooting down the road here. So I'll be starting that next month, or this month now. It's October, and that'll be me for the next year. And then there's also another smaller show that Taika's part of called Our Flag Means Death, and that's a half-an-hour comedy show. So that'll be starting at the same time. So we'll be juggling a couple of shows. We've got lots of really talented crew and basically two separate teams doing these two different shows, and I'll be across both of them.
Fantastic. And so hopefully when do you think we might see all of you collaborate again?
Hopefully on one of the shows that Damo just mentioned, actually, because I mean, Lindsay and I had such an amazing time being in New Zealand. It is such a incredible country. We got there not only right at the start of summer, but we also got there right when everybody was coming out of a 100-day lockdown. So everybody finally was able to go out and go to restaurants but the entire time we were there, they weren't allowing tourists to come in. So we just had our pick of anything we wanted to do on the weekends. We could go any kind of wine tasting, cave, cliff diving, whatever crazy wacko thing we wanted to do. We were able to do it all. And it was really, really fun.
River rafting.
Glowworms, we did it all. So we really have a love affair with the country of New Zealand, and there's such a great film scene there. We really, really had a great time. So hopefully we'll be able to go back and hang out again.
Reflective of its leadership and government, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We're definitely trying to get these two back for one of these shows. That's definitely high on the priority list. It's just a little while away. Oh well, yeah. Well, I mean, they're both so busy. I mean, that's the other thing. There's so many other shows that they'll be working on. We might not get them.
It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to all of you, and I know time-wise and schedules, it's so intensely busy. So I'm so grateful that you've made the effort on both sides of the world, and then here in the UK in the middle. Thank you very much indeed. I wish you all the best of luck in all of your projects. Congratulations once again for the collaboration for Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. And hopefully we'll enjoy many more productions and hopefully see you all working together very soon.
Great. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
You're most welcome.
Can I give a shout out to,
Oh,
I kind of
100%.
like thought of it after I gave you the answer, but we had speaking of women in our
Yes.
That's
in our
right.
show,
Yes.
our dialogue supervisor Stephanie Ng was amazing, and just everything was she she had to wrangle so many different actors from so many different places, because after they leave New Zealand, it's like the Wild West. But yeah, like she was our great dialogue supervisor. We had Gareth, who was helping her cut group, but we also had Luana Barnes was one of our mix techs, and so it was just like fun having all the women there represented. Did I forget anyone as far as women? But I mean, we had such a great team in general.
I'd like to add a little, just a small anecdote to that. While we were doing pre-mixing on each episode, so we had two stages running at the same time. A dialogue, music on one, with Lindsay running that room, and Bo on sound effects on the other room. And so me and Robbie would be in and out of those rooms throughout the week or two. And the very first dialogue premix that was happening in that room, I walked in the door, and there's Lindsay, Steph, Luana, all women on the stage. The only people on the stage were these three women, with Aileen, who was the dialogue editor, on a little screen out in LA. And so that was something I'd never experienced before. Like, just the representation on this show was awesome. And even on the Foley team, they one of the main partners is a woman called Abby Barber, and they have female Foley editors as well. So that's something that I was really quite proud of about this show, the representation of women on the crew.
Hey, there you go. I think it's fantastic.